Hello people of YouTube and welcome to the monthly review of July 2024. Pardon the very weird angle Signe refused to sit up for this intro. We have driven for how many hours? 6?
No, like 4.5.
4.5.
The actual driving was 4.5. We've been on the road for like 6.
There you go. And now we are at a tiny cabin on a campsite just before Lillehammer. Tomorrow we are going to Tønsberg-ish, and then the day after we are taking a flight to France. We are also driving 2 separate vehicles down because in preparation of the move, my motorcycle and our car both need to be down south before we go on vacation. So it's all a bit of an organizational hassle. How was your drive?
It was alright. It was a little boring and I didn't have anyone to talk to. And every time I saw a Dutch car, I slapped the ghost of you. Because it was just ingrained in me.
Very sad. I felt that too. Just for reference, for context, we do a thing because in Norway in summer, it's like the roads are taken over by Dutch people. You see them, I don't know, every 10th car, maybe? Which is kind of insane. So we've started doing the sort of yellow car thing because Dutch cars have yellow license plates where we shout Dutch car and slap each other. It's very childish, but here we are. Anyway, I'm tired. I think you are tired. So that'll be it. Let's see how tomorrow goes.
First and foremost about France, let's have a look at a couple of things I said during the curiosity and advances of years gone by. Have you managed to travel anywhere that isn't to your or to Signe's family? You have a very deep craving for eating a nice baguette by a French lakeside. There is very few things I want more in this life than buying the freshest croissant a man can dream of. Have you been able to visit France finally and have that baguette and that croissant that you so deeply crave? And at long last, croissant. Now, aside from eating a lot of excellent food, we basically did nothing while we were in France. We lay on the beach, did some swimming. We lay by the pool, did some swimming. I did a buttload of French on Duolingo, which was kind of fun to actually make some progress with that while in the place I am learning the language of/for. I finished reading War in the Air, and then I finished another book which wasn't Twilight, but might as well have been just Twilight. I genuinely do not remember the title at this point, but there is an edgy teenager-y girl who falls in love with a mythical-ish humanoid ancient creature. It's basically Twilight. Very easy to read and get through though. I read that entire book in about 3 days after having taken well over a year to read The War in the Air. Although it being summer break did have something to do with my ability to read that much in that short a time. We also were in France for the 14th of July, which is a big national holiday in France. We went out for dinner for it and then headed to the coastline where we saw a big fireworks display over the Mediterranean Sea, which was really, really cool.
How was your week in France? Nice.
Goodbye.
Tell me about it. Highlights, lowlights, middle lights.
We've been lying like this and like this at the beach and at the pool and at the apartment, and we've eaten food and we went to a vineyard and we saw some fireworks
Indeed. What was the highlight?
Vineyard, probably.
Why was the vineyard the highlight?
Because they had a little restaurant and they served very good food, and we got a big platter of meat to share, and it was very good. And I had a brownie.
Very nice. So what's next?
Next we're going to your dad in the good old Netherlands.
Seeing Frank's lake house for the first time, at least in your case.
Yes.
Good. Well, thank you for this quality interview. Enjoy your last bit of reading on the balcony.
It always goes well when you interview me while I'm reading.
Mm-hmm. Yes, your brain is clearly not occupied by...
This.
Exactly. Right. Bye.
After France, we headed to the Netherlands for a short stay, and the first day was kind of weird because we'd been in France with Signe's mom and Tore, and then we flew to the Netherlands. They drove to the Netherlands, and a day after we'd left, we saw each other again. They only stayed for one night, and after that they were going to drive further up, but before that night happened, we did a little walk around the city of Groningen. We had dinner together with my parents, which was kind of odd, but generally it was really cool to show some of Signe's family around where I'm from, because up until now that hadn't happened before. After 8 years of wanting to take Signe there, we finally went to Frank's lake house together. Of course, I've wanted to take Signe there before, but Frank didn't live there, so the opportunity to go there was much more rare than it is and will be going forward. But finally, after 8 years, we went to Frank's lake house, slept over there, did a bit of boating around, and just had a nice little stay there. Then finally, after having prepped for what feels like an eternity, we moved from Trondheim to the Tønsberg area. Signe flew back up from the Netherlands to Trondheim to start cleaning. My dad and I drove up in my dad's camper van. Halfway through the drive up, because it is like a 3-day journey to get to Trondheim from Groningen, we picked up a second van that I was going to drive further up, but before driving that van further up to Trondheim and arriving with 2 vans, my van turned out to be on slicks and sent me straight ahead in a roundabout. So very carefully, I crept back to the place we rented it from, Rent-A-Wreck, very reliable apparently, and they changed the tires, which caused us a day-long delay in our travel time. Excellent. Finally, after all of that was sorted and we got ourselves to Trondheim, we packed up and cleaned out the apartment in record time, and 2 days later we were on our way back south. And now we live here. Let me give you the tour. Alright, we are starting in the hallway, which is indeed just a hallway. Through there is a washing room, which is not very interesting or important. Staircase area, storage area, saga area. Stepping out from there and over the saga access prevention gate is a kitchen, which is a very mixed bag of stuff that is ours and stuff that is not ours. Back out of the kitchen is an eating space and living room stuff that isn't technically ours, so we're gonna move upstairs. Upstairs, everything we see effectively is ours. Through there is the bedroom, through there is our living space, through there is a guest room, and through that door is a bathroom. Bedroom, as you might expect, is a room with a bed in it. The bathroom, disappointingly, does not have a bath in it, but all the other essentials are there. I say it disappointingly does not have a bath in it, but the bathroom downstairs does have a bath which we occasionally can use if we want to, so, you know, I've got really nothing to complain about. The guest room, disappointingly, also does not have any guests in it. It has a very makeshift double guest bed and a lot of mess, including a backdrop I used for a video project a couple of weeks ago. Then arguably the most interesting room of all is the living room office space that Signe and I do most of our living and office space things in. It is absolutely gigantic. One thing worth pointing out is that that door frame and that door frame do normally have doors in them, but we've been painting them white because they used to have just plain wood texture like the ceiling. The rest of our stuff is probably fairly recognizable. There is my desk, which I built in Linköping. It's a bit of a mess at the moment because I just got a new laptop, which is very much more powerful than my desktop is, but the desktop is sort of what this whole desk is currently set up for, so I'm not really sure how to reorganize this, and I've been so busy with work that I've just not bothered and done this instead. Laptop connected to monitor and mouse and keyboard, that is effectively in disuse at the moment. So is that weird floaty monitor there. Then that is Signe's desk, where she has been working basically every day because she still works for the same customer in Trondheim, but remotely from down south. And then we've effectively got the same living room setup as we had in Trondheim, except this is a different bed than we had. This bed was already here, and we sold the bed that we had in the living room in Trondheim. But we just got here and got the exact same situation set back up. So, you know, nothing changed effectively. And that's the house tour. The reason that the stuff downstairs is so weirdly divided and not entirely ours is that we rent this upper floor from Signe's dad, who owns the entire house. He himself doesn't actually live here, but he uses the ground floor as a cabin type situation, so he's here every other weekend, once a month, thereabouts. And for Signe and me, this setup is kind of temporary because we intend to buy a house in this area over the next year, thereabouts. Which is why we haven't bothered unpacking literally everything and putting literally all of our stuff in various places and displacing all of the stuff that already was here, because sooner or later, all of the stuff that already was here is going to be back in place as the only stuff that's here, and our stuff will fully move out once again. But for all intents and purposes, I've been pretty settled here the last couple of months. Quite nice to be back in the Tønsberg area after having intended to be back here for over 3 years. So even though this still is a temporary step between having lived in Trondheim and where we eventually want to sort of properly settle, I do feel like we're 90% of the way towards settling properly, because we're already in the correct area. Anyway, we've got a few more things to cover, so let's get back to the activities of, not technically July, but August. After we'd unpacked everything, Frank came, Dad left, and before anything else, Frank and I went on a little excursion to Verdens Ende, where Frank couldn't help himself but take a little swim. Out.
Heel goed.
A few days later, we trundled off to the cabin together, Frank and I on our motorcycles and Signe by car, where we introduced Frank to Langedrag, the local nature park. While we were at the cabin, we also had a little hike to a place Frank found on Google Maps, called Hotel California. Why it was called Hotel California, we could not figure out. There were no references in or around the building that explained why it was called that. There were just a bunch of references to other places around the world that were called Hotel California as well. Also on the way up, we met a middle-aged man who couldn't help himself but joke that there were no rooms available in reference to the song. Also, this Hotel California specifically was actually just like a mountain shelter. One tiny room with a small table and some chairs, but that was everything. So alas, Dad Joke Mickey was right. No rooms available. The views, however, pretty spectacular. And then Frank also left, with me. We went on a little motorcycle camping adventure into Sweden so that Frank would already be well on his way back to the Netherlands for when he'd set off the day after. The ride down was wonderful. The roads were absolutely perfect. The food we had at a little restaurant called Local Idiot was genuinely wonderful. As an appetizer, we got some popcorn that was spiced in the most incredible way I've ever had popcorn. And when we asked for the recipe, the waitress simply said, "You're just gonna have to come back." So, sooner or later, maybe we will. It's a little bit out of the way. And after this incredible popcorn, we had a steak that was just drowning in herbal butter. And dear Lord, was it delicious. The camping itself, however, was a bit swift.
Yeah, that should be okay. This is the day that Frank left. So yesterday, Frank and I rode our motorcycles down to Sweden, to fairly close to the easternmost big lake. I think that's called Vänern or Vättern. I never know which one's which. We arrived at a place where we could set up our tents at about 9:30. It was already getting fairly dark, which was not ideal. We spent a bit more time searching for a place to set up shop than we were hoping for, so we didn't really have time to do anything in the evening. Then in the morning, I got a message from Frank's tent that he'd booked a ferry to go over to Denmark, because it was always the plan that Frank was going to go back south and we would split off. But we were kind of aiming to have a slightly longer and slower breakfast, but it was still a bit rainy and Frank decided that he was in a hurry. So by 9 in the morning, I was back on my bike, heading back to Norway. Now I've ridden about 3.5 hours and just sat down to eat and have some coffee and take a breather for half an hour because I am tired. My first night in a tent never goes very well, and considering how hectic last night was, all not ideal. So I am feeling a bit sleepy, so I'm gonna sit for maybe 5 more minutes, let my food settle, let my coffee start working, and then I'll do the last, I think, hour to the ferry in Moss, then take the ferry across the fjord, and then I'll be home in Signe, and my new home, which you'll have seen at this point, I think. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's get on with August.
Or let's not. I didn't really shoot much at all for August, so the couple of bits that I did shoot, I'm gonna cross over into the end of July and the start of September. But honestly, those little overlaps happen all the time, so it's barely worth addressing. Sometimes I don't even do a monthly review at all. Anyway, for this one, July of 2024, with a little bit of August, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to push some of the positive buttons down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao! Thank you.